Hello, everyone. My name is Charissa Jones, but I also go by Sharzi. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Outreach and Inclusion Coordinator for the Outdoor School Program here at Extension.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kris Elliot. I'm the Director of the Outdoor School Program and Program Leader. I use he, him pronouns, and really excited to be with you all today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining me. Thought we'd just jump right into the conversation. And I'm really interested in what actions Outdoor School has taken this year to advance and embed equity in its work.
So if the actions that Outdoor School has taken this year actually started in the spring of 2020 because of the responses to George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Christopher Cooper, and all of the other social justice issues that were happening during that time. So we came together as a staff in a retreat where we met in Bend, and we talked about, do our mission, vision, and values reflect the times and what was happening out in the world? Do they reflect what happens to people of color when they're going out into the outdoors, especially as an outdoor school program? Are we being cognizant of that? And are we being cognizant of how schooling was shifting from being in person to being now virtual? So we spent a couple of days in Bend unpacking what our values were, different definitions that we had, that we each held personally as a staff, having some training around social emotional learning, so we would be able to better support our program providers, the education school districts, and individual school administration as we were all shifting towards this time. So out of that meeting, out of those couple of days, we came up with an updated mission and vision that really centered equity and called it out. We have new values that reflect that as well. And then we redid our organizational why to make sure that we were really focusing on equity, and we would be able to, without a doubt, speak any of these things to a partner, to a stakeholder, to a potential partner, and that they understood that the OSU Extension Outdoor School Service really believed in equity, and it was foundational to the work that we wanted to support, or the work that we wanted to see created from our larger outdoor school network. And so that was kind of the first, those were kind of the first initiatives that set us off, that really got us thinking about what does equity look like and how do we embed it into our initiatives. And then from there, oh, I'm sorry, Kris.
Well, I was just going to add in that one of the things that came out of that meeting is this shift in philosophies. Often, we talk about outdoor school, we talk about outdoor education, and we really shifted our viewpoint to really say that we are an equity program. Outdoor school is the way that we engage in equity work. And so rather than this sort of like previous mindset of we're outdoor school, how do we embed equity? We actually shifted completely. And so if you ask, I think, anyone on our team every day when we show up to work, what are we engaged in? And it's equity work, because if we do that well, we're impacting the lives of beyond the 5th and 6th graders that we're trying to reach every day. We just happen to choose outdoor education as the way to do it.
Yeah. And a lot of that also leads to, it's not just us as the fiscal sponsor for outdoor school, as the funding source, but internally, how do we as staff members, as individuals, start thinking about equity? So there's a lot of support for us to individually start doing our own training. And then as a group, we've had, as a staff, we've had opportunities to do book clubs where we've taken books like How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi and really dive in and see how does the content impact and intersect with outdoor education? What does that look like? How can we use that content to help and support the different folks in our regions, whether they're program providers or site providers or the schools and what's happening with the schools? I really have appreciated how we've shifted our culture. And it's not just something that we say where we talk about equity being important and maybe we have a staff training once a year and nobody really engages personally. Everybody's engaging personally. And if you come into our meetings or on our Slack channel every day, different people are talking about or sharing links to trainings that they take on themselves, that they've gone and researched. And we start asking critically, how does the work that we do impact our students? How does the work that we do impact our program providers and sites? How can we be transparent and model the types of equity strategies that we'd like to see? Because if we can't model it, how are we then going to turn around and say, hello, program provider, you as an organization need to address all of these things that OSU Extension Outdoor School won't address. And so we are really walking that walk and modeling what we're doing and being open about any struggles as we are coming to terms with our own biases and how we see the world, or how we've seen outdoor ed and how we've engaged with it. And that's something that I really appreciate. And I know that our program providers have appreciated, because it's easier to start getting into this work, especially if it's newer to you, if you can see how somebody else is also working through their own biases, their own ideas of self and identity. And that's something that I really appreciate.
It's really awesome. I love your frame around, it's almost like turning it on its head. It's not like embedding equity in outdoor school. It's actually like outdoor school is the avenue for equity work. And it's a great way of thinking about it. And Charissa, I really appreciated your thinking about how this work has to come from growth within a team, for you all to kind of negotiate and deliberate amongst and within your own relationships with each other, like what this work is going to look like so that you can do it sustainably. I'm interested in, the last year has been a really difficult one for all sorts of reasons. In between, obviously some of the reckoning around racial injustice that has been a part of this country since its inception. And then along with everything else, including a global pandemic and so forth. I'm interested in perhaps what challenges and barriers you faced this year, maybe as individuals in this work and also as a team, as you've sought to sort of advance these really important pieces of work in outdoor school.
Yeah, I think the challenges this year, there's a lot. Some of the ones that rise to the top are, data is important when you're running a program to ensure equity. You have to look at, are we reaching every student in an equitable way? Are student outcomes equitable across the programming? And one of the barriers that we face is we don't work directly with students. And so we don't know students' identities. And so while we can make a lot of assumptions and engage in a lot of qualitative research and sort of, summative research, we don't know the details of every single student's identity who participates. And so that's certainly been a barrier, and we continue to work with the Oregon Department of Education to hopefully ask them to collect that data and then provide it to us in an anonymous way so we can make those program improvements. We need data to be able to continue to improve. And so I think that's a significant barrier right now that we're facing. The other one that's has been and continues to be difficult is ensuring that we have a staff, not only our team, not only OSU Extension, not only OSU, I mean, it goes on, but certainly the non-formal educators that are delivering the programming across the state don't reflect the demographics of our state. And that's an ongoing discussion. We keep talking about it. We keep trying new things, and it continues to be a challenge. And we know that there are a lot of structural changes that have to take place to move the needle significantly. So we're leaning into the work, but we're also learning a lot. We don't know all the answers. And so we have to continue to be vulnerable and try new things and admit when we make mistakes and continue to move in a positive direction.
Another challenge that came up is for a program that is called Outdoor School, the COVID and the need to quarantine really shifted what we had to think about when we thought about what is outdoor learning and how do you engage students who are now being told that they can't go to their schools and that they have to learn online. So how do we engage via an online platform? And I really appreciate the entire team because we were able to come and brainstorm what this looks like. How do we engage students to talk about the outdoors, the environment, science through a virtual platform? We also have a lot of great program providers and informal educators who had some experience in that area, and they were able to come on and help share their knowledge and explain and give examples that other providers could use who haven't had that experience before. One of the great things that came out of all of this, if we can talk about a great thing that came out of it, is a curriculum community of practice that came together so that folks could have a space to talk about what barriers are coming up when they're talking about putting together comprehensive distance learning. Do they know the types of platforms or tools that students and schools are familiar with? And can the providers get access to that so that it's not too much of a change for students from going from what they're doing in their online school to an online outdoor school program? How can we start to train ourselves with the different tools that are being utilized? All of those things came up, and with this curriculum community of practice, which is still going on now, we have this space where everybody gets to share. People have a space to vent or to ask questions, or, you know, if they're not getting it. And I really just appreciate the culture of collaboration. It's not about competition. People have really gone out of their comfort zones to step in and to support other providers, to support other informal educators, to ensure that the programs that they put together really are accessible to students, are engaging for other students. And it's not about my program versus your program, but how can we make sure that the students this year are not losing an outdoor school experience because they can't go outside.
Yeah, that's an awesome reflection. I mean, we in our office, we talk a lot about like the importance of shared learning and how a lot of this work just can't, I mean, it cannot be done individually. There needs to be a collective of folks that are working together, both because the problems are so tricky and oftentimes deep-seated, but then also because we bring our own experiences to this, you know, to this work, our own identities, our own lived professional and personal experiences. And so I appreciate sort of the intention that of creating a community of practice around shared learning, which is awesome. I want to just shift and sort of look forward, right? Like one thing that we've been trying to do is think about the fact that this work has felt very reactive this year, where we've needed to adjust and shift in all of these different ways, which I think has inspired some growth, but also I think has just felt like firefighting at moments. And so as you look forward into the next year, are there some things that you're particularly excited about as you continue doing this important equity work in outdoor school? And maybe you could speak to a couple of those things that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, so changes that are underway and things we're looking forward to, a few pop into my brain right now. There's a lot, so it's really exciting. But, you know, during the pandemic, outdoor school, as we know it, sort of shifted to CDL for the most part. And so you had providers that were at facilities with staff with not a lot of outdoor education to do. And we had an excess or reserve funding that wasn't being spent on that programming. And so we put our heads together and very quickly determined that those funds would be specialized grants for providers to engage in program complete equity overhauls or an equity approach to their site. So making sure their site is more accessible in all aspects of the meaning of that word. And so it's really exciting to see those grant applications come in, to see those folks be vulnerable as we've provided feedback to them to say, have you thought about this as well? And for them to be receptive to those additions or changes and to really, really be engaged in structural changes that will propel their programs and their students' experiences for many, many years to come. So these aren't Band-Aids, these aren't books that someone read. All that is great, but these have the potential to be structural changes that are going to exist long into the future. So that's super exciting. One other thing that's really exciting is our webpage actually gets a lot of traffic, a lot of educators, parents, and it will be relaunched. We're hoping late June in WCAG AA rating. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I know what requirements we need to get it there. And that's really exciting because we want to make sure that everyone that comes to our page is able to experience in its full intent. And it will also be launched fully in Spanish as well. We have many other languages we need to get to, but that's where we've started. And so those are two that come to my mind.
Some other opportunities that I'm looking forward to in the upcoming year are, one is that we're going to continue our curriculum community of practice. It's going to shift from, as you said, being responsive to COVID, or have at least such an intense focus on COVID, and just shift to how can we improve our curriculum overall, including utilizing some of the self-evaluation tools that we've created, like our instructional resource self-evaluation tool, the ERSET, or the cultural responsiveness self-evaluation tool, and our special education and accessibility self-evaluation tool. So what do providers need as they are looking through those tools and evaluating their programs and their curriculum and seeing where they currently sit and what they need to do to move forward? And so that's really exciting that the folks that have been involved in that community really want to see that community continue to have a space where they can rely on each other, they can share knowledge, and they can learn, they can continue that learning. We're also looking at how one of the things that COVID has taught us, as it's probably taught a lot of folks, is virtual learning, though we had quite a bit of a bumpy start to it, is something that we want to continue to utilize because we see the benefits of having that. And in one area is, how do we provide professional development that is something that folks can take on themselves, so that we don't have to worry so much about traveling for every little PD that we've put on, which is great, but we want to make the more of our PD more accessible to folks so that they can take it at any time. So how can we build out some professional development that is self-paced that folks can do? We are looking at the extension DEI Volunteer 101 training that I'm a part of with Analu Fonseca's office. How can we take that training and reformat it for outdoor school? Some of our outdoor school providers have been asking about that, especially those who are also engaged with other extension programs. And what does that look like? So what can we take from COVID and incorporate into our programming that will ensure that we are making sure that equity is at the forefront, thinking about accessibility and how do we really engage with accessibility, special education, and students with disabilities who may or may not have had all of the resources that they've needed to have in order to fully participate in outdoor school. Those are different topics that, if it hasn't come from our staff has had some really great relationships with our program providers and sites and the schools and school districts. It's coming from that community where they're asking. We want to ensure that these aspects that came out in COVID remain, so that we have access for all of our students, so that we're ensuring that that this program continues to be accessible for all students, and we're addressing the needs that they have. And so those are some of the initiatives that I'm really excited as we start to plan forward in the upcoming years.
This is awesome. And the thing I like most about talking to folks in different parts of the institution is I learn a lot. I feel like I've learned a lot. And it's also like very much aligning with some of our thinking in our office around, we made all of these adaptations, particularly to the way that we deliver educational, educational content. And it turns out that there are actually a lot of benefits, and we don't want to lose some of those important benefits because it has created so much more access in areas and in places, particularly where we were having a hard time just like physically accessing. And so I appreciate that seems to be something that others are reflecting on, and going back to the, there is no such thing as like going back to normal. We're going to go back to something new. And hopefully with all of these lessons that we've learned. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me. This was a really great conversation. I realize we could probably keep going, but I know I want to be respectful of your time. In terms of, I want to give you the last word. Any thoughts or comments that you wanted to add just as you chat with or as you're talking to the OSU community as part of the State of Diversity address? I invite your closing thoughts now.
I think one thing that I'm really excited about is seeing what the rest of the OSU community is doing and how we can learn from each other. And we would really love to hear if anybody's using our tools. We know that we have the focus of outdoor school and outdoor education, but you can shift that focus and see how it works for your program. And we'd love to hear any feedback, or if there are any areas or any identities or communities that we are not addressing now, or that you have an experience with that you would like to share. This is how we are engaging with these communities, and this is how we're bringing up these aspects of equity. We'd love to hear that too, because we really want to make sure that we are really thinking about equity broadly, and how does outdoor school work for all of the students that we have here in Oregon, and what do we need to do as the OSU outdoor school team? What do we need to do to help support our providers? If there's anything that anybody is thinking about, we would love to hear all of that as well.
And I might just share my gratitude for my teammates who show up every day with this on their minds. It's so amazing to show up and to know that this is important to everyone. Scott, your office, your team has been super supportive, so thank you. Anna Lou's office and the extension, Elsa Curtis, they've been phenomenal. Our advisory committee has been phenomenal. Anytime that we've asked for help, folks have shown up and been involved. So certainly while we're engaged in this work, we couldn't do it without the larger community. So thank you.
Yeah,